Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. We're going to start today's video with a bar chart. I don't think I've ever done this before, but this bar chart is super interesting. This was put out by NATO yesterday, showing the defense expenditure as a share of GDP for the entire NATO alliance. There's two colors. The light blue is 10 years ago, 2014. The dark blue is the estimate for this year for the entire alliance. Poland leads the way, spending over 4% of their GDP on defense. Estonia comes in second place with 3.4%. The United States is third with 3.3%. And the United States is the only one who's decreased over the last 10 years. The reason being is back in 2014, we were still heavily involved in Iraq and Afghanistan. But 3/4 of the alliance meets the 2% NATO guideline. It's not a rule, it's not a requirement, it's a recommendation. It's a guideline. Who doesn't meet the guideline? Croatia, Portugal, Italy, Canada, Belgium, Luxembourg, Slovenia, and Spain. But you can see the trend for even the countries that don't meet the 2%. With the exception of Croatia, which is about the same, all the other countries in the NATO alliance have dramatically increased their spending on defense. Good job, Luxembourg, more than tripling. So the alliance is strengthening, it's improving, and this is a direct result of the Russians and their threats. All the countries that border Russia are getting serious about their defense. Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland. And here's an interesting clip from Russia Media Monitor. The entire thing's like 8 minutes. I'll link it down below. But they look pretty sad on Kremlin State TV, talking about the latest round of sanctions and how Russia is surrounded by enemies. With the exception of Belarus, the people of all of Russia's neighbors hate Russia because they're an empire. They're a bully. They threaten and attack their neighbors all the time. This is an unbelievable clip from Solyov on Kremlin State TV. He has the audacity to say this with a straight face. Let me read this for you. We are not trying to conquer Ukraine. We are not trying to deprive them of statehood. We are not trying to deprive them of sovereignty as such, although they do not have it. We are not trying to conquer Western Europe. Why would he use the word Western when there's a Central and Eastern Europe? We're conducting a police operation to enforce peace, which is clear from the number of troops that we're explaining why we're going this particular way, that it was solely due to Vladimir Putin explained every step of this topic in great detail. For what purpose? To break the West's lie to take Kyiv in 3 days. Everyone on Kremlin State TV was saying this in February of 2022, that they could take the capital city of Kyiv in 3 days or a week. Solyov himself said this. This is not a Western lie. Although Putin says there was not even close to a political decision to take Kyiv. This was not even on the table. And it's no coincidence that Putin says capturing a city of 3 million people with such amount of forces and means. We have highly professional people in the general staff who understand very well, especially when we draw on the experience of the Great Patriotic War, what it is to conduct this kind of operation, and what number of forces and means is necessary. So this is the chicken and the egg. The Russians are now trying to defend themselves, saying their intention was never to take the capital city of Kyiv, because they launched their full-scale invasion of Ukraine with such a small invasion force. They're trying to give themselves cover, saying, we were never going to take Kyiv. Only an idiot would invade Ukraine, a country of 40 million people, with such a small invasion force. And our general staff in the military is not incompetent. They would never launch a full-scale invasion with such a small, underwhelming, unorganized, incompetent force. That's their defense. Holy cow. Time will play in Ukraine's favor once F-16s and more Western aid arrives. This is according to Ukraine's military commander, General Syrskyi. And General Syrskyi makes the argument that the reason why the Russian military is pushing so hard right now, this summer, is because they know it's only going to get more difficult over the next 6 months. The United States is sending another Patriot system to Ukraine. The Germans are also sending another Patriot system. F-16s are going to arrive any day now. And with MAGA blocking military aid from the United States for 8 months, this put a lot of pressure on other Western allies to increase their contributions. But it takes time. It takes time to prepare and deliver, and for these weapons and supplies to reach the front line. We've already felt the benefits the last 2 months, but it's only going to get worse for Russia every single day. Time is on Ukraine's side. Rare Ukrainian smart bomb strikes pound and cut off Russian troops. According to reports, there's this isolated pocket of Russian soldiers currently being hit with NATO standard smart munitions. This is happening in the city of Vovchansk. I've not mentioned this, but it's now been going on for possibly 2 weeks. There's a group of about 400 Russian troops trapped in the city of Vovchansk. They're underground. This is some kind of factory, and they've been cut off from resupply. The Russians can't get them food, water, or ammunition. So they're hiding out in the basement of this factory. It's pretty big. And they're just being pounded day and night with glide bombs from Ukrainian planes. I'll link the video down below if you want to see it. I didn't mention it in my previous videos because I didn't think it would last this long, but eventually these Russian soldiers are going to surrender or they're going to die. I don't think anyone's trying to reach them. I don't think the Russian military at the moment in Kharkiv has the capacity to save these guys. Ukrainian forces hit 15 Russian air defense systems in Crimea just over the past 2 months. I've lost count of how many times Ukraine has destroyed a Russian air defense system on the west coast of Crimea. It's clear Ukraine is trying to go after these radar installations and air defense systems to clear the skies for F-16s. But Crimea is the key, and I think Ukraine knows this. If I'm being honest, there's going to be another debate here in the United States after the November election. I think Congress has to vote on another $50 or $60 billion aid package for Ukraine in either December or January. And the Ukrainians know, or they think, they need to make some kind of visible progress by December or January to make the arguments here in the United States to get more military aid. So I think Kherson and Crimea is the key. We don't know the details, I have no specifics, but I do think that Ukraine believes Kherson and Crimea is the weak point for the Russian military, and if they can get across the river en masse, they can easily take some territory. If they can make a breakthrough in Kherson, if they can destroy that bridge, Crimea will be isolated, and then it's the siege of Crimea for 2025. That's going to be the arguments that Zelensky will make to the United States in Congress to continue military aid for another year. So Russia knows this as well, and they keep transferring air defense systems to Crimea, to the detriment of mainland Russia. We have reports every night of drone attacks. This time Ukraine struck a metallurgic plant as well as facilities in 3 other Russian regions. Russia's air defense systems inside of Russia are nowhere to be found. petroleum storage tanks on fire in Russia's Rostov Oblast. Here's what an oil depot fire looks like at sunrise. And this happened in the city of Azov. This is the Rostov region. Once again, a drone attack. And this oil depot burned for at least 5 or 6 hours before the firefighters could put it out. So Russia's taken some losses. They need to course correction. What is Putin's grand strategy? Putin appoints a relative to defense ministry post in yet another shakeup. So Putin has sacked 4 deputy defense ministers, and to replace them, put one of his relatives in. So who is this woman? Anna Sivilyov, a daughter of Putin's late cousin. So this woman is Putin's cousin's daughter. So this is Putin's cousin once removed. And she's apparently the president of a coal mining company, and she's the wife of Russia's energy minister. So the goal of Putin is to crack down on corruption and theft inside the Russian military, but also to transfer Russia into a permanent wartime economy. Putin is prepared to have these wars with NATO, Eastern, Central Europe, and the Caucasus. These wars are going to go on for decades. So Putin wants people who understand business or finance or the economy to be in charge of the military. Now, is this woman the most qualified woman to do that job? Of course not. She's the wife of Russia's energy minister and Putin's first cousin once removed. So here's Garry Kasparov's thoughts. The circle around a dictator shrinks faster in a time of crisis. Loyalty trumps all, increasing paranoia and reducing competency. As dumb and dangerous as Putin's terrorist mafia state is now, it is best to do everything to collapse it now before it gets even worse. For Russians living in exile, such as Garry Kasparov, Putin's government needs to fall. Russia needs a hard reset for there to be any hope for the Russian people to live in a peaceful future. Moscow confirms A-50 aircraft was shot down by Ukraine. The investigative committee of the Russian Federation confirmed that the Ukrainian Air Force shot down a rare Russian A-50 AWACS plane over the Sea of Azov back in February, killing all 10 crew members on board. This plane was worth $350 million. And this was 6 months ago, and the Russians did an investigation. Initially, the Russians denied it, said it didn't happen. Then they said, no, they shot down their own plane. Because incompetence is better than admitting Ukraine has capabilities. But now Russia changes their mind again, and they want to, in absentia, charge the commander of this air defense unit with a crime, as if that's going to do anything. Here's some thoughts from Ukrainian journalist Ponomarenko. If you ever feel ludicrous, pathetic, and laughable, just remember that Russia once brought criminal charges against the Ukrainian Air Defense Unit commander in absentia over the downing of this A-50, which Russia said never happened, on the grounds that the A-50 being a non-combat aircraft that has no weaponry on board, and that was carrying out a flight exclusively within Russian airspace. So if you count the airspace over Zaporizhia as Russian airspace, and an AWACS plane, because it doesn't have any missiles on board, as a non-combat plane, you're ridiculous, Russia. Ukrainians capture a Blatmobile barn tank with the crew for the first time. In the West, we call these turtle tanks, but in Ukraine, they call them Blatmobiles. And this looks like a fun picture of some Ukrainian defenders capturing one of Russia's stupid turtle tanks. There's a video, and you can see everyone seeing this thing drive by. Everyone's laughing. let's just watch that again. The mighty Russian military. Next picture I want to share with you involves that nuclear submarine that the Russians sent to Cuba to threaten and intimidate the United States. This Russian sub pulled into the port city of Havana. But experts were staring at this Russian submarine and they noticed the submarine doesn't look that great. There's acoustic paneling missing from the submarine. The outside layer protects it or shields it from sonar to make it more of a stealth sub. But there's giant chunks missing from the submarine. The paneling isn't necessary for the sub to run, but if this thing's cruising underwater for thousands of kilometers with unnecessary drag, one, more paneling is going to rip off, but two, this is incredibly inefficient. So Russia sent their submarine to Cuba to show strength, but I mean, I'm laughing at it. This is pathetic, Russia. Putin needs allies, so he's decided to go to North Korea. It's always super awkward and weird when dictators get together, but we don't have the pictures and videos yet. This is happening this morning, right now. I'll share some goofy clips, I'm sure, in the next video. But the North Koreans and the Russians, along with a Chinese delegation, are talking about something pretty incredible. This is a top story. This is unbelievable what Russia is about to do. And Russia is about to transfer to the Chinese the Tumen River. What is the Tumen River? Well, the Russians attacked China back in the 1800s, stole a bunch of territory for them. The Russians deprived the Chinese of access to the Sea of Japan and the Pacific Ocean through the Sea of Okhotsk. But there is a very small way out for the Chinese. If we zoom in, North Korea and Russia share this very tiny border with a single rail connection. There's not even a road. There's no bridge. It's just a rail bridge. And this is the Tumen River. So this little wedge right here, this is China. This is North Korea. This is Russia. China can't get out to the Sea of Japan. This is something China wants. And the Russians are willing to do it. The Russians are so desperate, they're going to give territorial concessions, even if it's just water, to the Chinese. What this means is that Chinese farmers and Chinese merchants from all these major cities, they can start building dams and canals, and China is going to widen this river. They're going to dredge it to make it bigger. And this will allow for commercial shipping, but also for the Chinese military to do whatever they want. So I'm sure the Russians don't like this plan because they're giving up territory to the Chinese. I don't think the North Koreans like it either because they don't want ships and economic activity to confuse their people because their people still live in the Dark Ages. But China's going to do it, and this is pretty fascinating to watch. China, I think it would be just a lot easier if you just got back your old territory here. I mean, the Russians don't even look like they're using it. So let's reflect on this alliance. Russia, China, and North Korea. This is the lookout point, I think, from the Chinese. Oh, that's the rail bridge right there. Okay, so this is the river, and this is some kind of lookout from the Chinese side. This is North Korea to the south and Russia to the north. And here's some fantastic commentary from Anne Applebaum. She's an American journalist and historian, and she appeared on Bill Kristol's podcast. I want to share this clip in its entirety.
The interesting thing is we're talking about countries that do not share ideology. So communist China, nationalist Russia, theocratic Iran, Bolivarian socialist Venezuela, whatever North Korea is. These aren't countries that share an ideology or meet in some secret room where they design things. It's not like a James Bond movie, but they do share a common interest, and the common interest is undermining us. and us, I mean America, Europe, the liberal world, the democratic world, because their own oppositions, whether it's the Hong Kong democracy movement or whether it's the Navalny movement in Russia or whether it's the women's movement in Iran, are inspired by and use democratic language, and they use the language of freedom and liberty and rights and rule of law, and they need to undermine that language on behalf of their, in order to keep in power domestically, and because chaos and uncertainty offer them business opportunities in the Western world. So these are very, very rich people. That makes them also, by the way, very different from autocrats of the previous century. They're very wealthy. Their friends are very wealthy. They like having places to hide their money in Europe. They like to have friends inside European politics who can make sure they're still able to buy whatever it is, houses in France or on Lake Como. And so they have an interest in shaping the debate inside the liberal democracies in ways that benefit them. And increasingly, they've concluded that what benefits them is the rise of illiberal, disruptive and radical parties, because when that happens, the Western world or the democratic world loses its sense of community and solidarity. It loses its ability to make group decisions. If we're divided by radical politics in different countries, then we're not very good at standing up to them.
That is so fascinating. So countries like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, they're not natural allies. They don't share a common ideology. The only thing they have in common is the people of those countries are prisoners. You have no rights and freedoms inside of North Korea. You have no rights and freedoms inside of Russia or China or Iran. So the ruling elites, the wealthy, to experience freedom, they've got to go to the West. So they love getting rich, robbing the resources of their states, and then buying homes and yachts and villas in democratic countries that protect property rights. But they want to weaken democracy. They want to make democracy look chaotic and incompetent so it doesn't threaten their power base at home. These countries all hate each other, but they're willing to work together to undermine democracy, to stop women's rights, LGBTQ rights, any kind of democratic form, any kind of information from the outside reaching their people, such as North Korea. This alliance isn't going to hold. All of these countries are going to lose. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Latvia sent their first batch of drones to Ukraine and are preparing a second one. This is from a fund of 20 million euros that they created for Ukraine. Thank you so much to the people of Latvia. Austria allocates an additional 10 million in humanitarian aid for Ukraine. Thank you so much, Austria. Canada announces a 38 million in further aid for Ukraine. This is going to help their energy infrastructure. Thank you so much to the people of Canada. Japan allocates 188 million for grant projects for Ukrainian businesses. Thank you so much to the people of Japan. Final clip I have for you is from Constantine. I've been following him on Twitter for almost 2 years. He's a Ukrainian combat veteran, but he currently lives in Texas. And he has lots of family still in Ukraine, especially in the city of Kharkiv. So he's doing a fundraiser right now to purchase some needed materials for this workshop that serves the Ukrainian military. And I just want to show you his video for his fundraiser because it's a glimpse behind the scenes, behind the curtains, of the thankless work that ordinary Ukrainians are doing for their military every single day.
Hello everyone, here is an update from our Kharkiv workshop. Despite constant bombardments, air raids, air alerts, and electricity outages, our team doesn't stop working. We finished a new batch of protective cages for Bogdana howitzers and handed them over to the units for the installation. This is a hard work, it's challenging both physically and mentally. It also requires design skills and it's also injury prone. Our workshop is essentially an abandoned and finished hangar with a leaking roof in Kharkiv. But we have a crane, we have welding equipment and other tools that allow us to build those cages and repair excavators. Team in Kharkiv is small and it consists of Kharkiv natives who refuse to give up.
So your support is very important to us. It gives us hope, it saves Ukrainian lives, and it allows us to continue supporting Ukrainian armed forces. Please continue donating, please keep helping us, and Slava Ukraini.
This video gives me slight anxiety watching this man in flip-flops moving around metal cages, but they do good work. If you want to support Constantine's fundraiser, I'll put the link to the PayPal page down below. Drones to Save Lives. Their goal is 55,000. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.